In the 20th century, one philosopher stood out with bold ideas about the mind and consciousness: Frank Cameron Jackson. Known for his groundbreaking work on consciousness, physicalism, and the limits of scientific knowledge, Jackson gave us one of the most famous thought experiments in modern philosophy. It appears in his essay, What Mary Didn't Know, and it's known today as Mary's Room. Through this powerful thought experiment, Jackson challenges us to think about the relationship between knowledge and experience, using the story of a scientist named Mary. And this simple scenario has shaken the foundations of how we understand the mind, perception, and what it really means to know. So, what exactly is Mary's Room thought experiment? Imagine a girl named Mary. She's not just any student. Mary is a brilliant neuroscientist, one of the world's leading experts on color and color vision. She knows everything science can teach us about how the eyes and brain work. She understands the biology of vision, the chemistry of light, and the physics of wavelengths. She even knows what happens in the retina when we look at a bright blue sky. But here's the catch. Mary has lived her entire life in a completely black and white room. She has never actually seen color with her own eyes. All her knowledge comes from black and white books and television programs. Now picture this. One day, Mary steps outside her monochrome room and onto the gray city streets. And then it happens. She sees a red apple for the very first time. Here's the burning question. When Mary sees that apple, does she learn something new? Has she discovered something about color that all the textbooks and scientific theories never gave her? For most of us, the intuitive answer is yes. For the first time, Mary now knows what it feels like to see red, the vividness of a rose, the depth of a sunset, the brightness of the sky. But remember, Mary already knew every physical fact about vision, so if she did learn something new, that means her new knowledge cannot be explained purely by physical science. It suggests there are non-physical truths about consciousness, realities that go beyond chemistry, biology, or neuroscience. And that's the radical conclusion. The mind may not be entirely physical. If Mary learns something when she sees red, then no amount of scientific explanation can fully capture the raw, subjective experience of consciousness, what philosophers call qualia. Professor Frank Jackson first introduced this in his paper, Epiphenomenal Qualia. Since then, Mary's story has become known as the knowledge argument, one of the most powerful and debated thought experiments in the entire philosophy of mind. So how does Mary's Room thought experiment challenge physicalism? Professor Frank Jackson designed this scenario as a direct challenge to the physicalist worldview. In the philosophy of mind, physicalists argue that consciousness is nothing more than physical processes in the brain, that the mind can be completely explained through biology, chemistry, and neuroscience. But throughout history, physicalists have always clashed with dualists. Dualism, going back to René Descartes, claims that the mind and the body are distinct, that consciousness is not reducible to physical matter. Physicalists insist that science will eventually explain consciousness fully. Yet Jackson argues that when Mary steps out of her black and white room and sees a red apple for the first time, she learns something genuinely new. And if that's true, then not all knowledge is physical. Some truths can only be grasped from a first-person perspective. This echoes philosopher Thomas Nagel's famous 1974 essay, What Is It Like to Be a Bat? Nagel argued that there are aspects of reality, what philosophers call qualia, that cannot be captured by objective science. So what are qualia? They are the raw, subjective qualities of experience. What it feels like to see red, to feel pain, to listen to music, or to taste chocolate. These are truths that you cannot learn from textbooks or equations. You only understand them through direct experience. Dualists argue that qualia show us consciousness involves something beyond the physical world, an extra layer of reality science cannot reduce. Physicalists, on the other hand, reject this, claiming that qualia do not add anything beyond the physical facts. And it's within this tension, between physicalism and dualism, that the knowledge argument continues to spark some of the most heated debates in modern philosophy. Of course, not everyone agrees with Jackson's conclusion. Some of the sharpest critics of dualist theories, like David Lewis, argue that when Mary sees red for the first time, she doesn't actually gain new knowledge. Instead, she simply acquires new abilities, such as the ability to remember, imagine, and recognize the color red. Lewis illustrates this with a simple analogy. Seeing a locomotive might give you the ability to recognize its shape, but that doesn't mean you suddenly know its precise geometric definition. And the reverse is true as well. Just because you know a train's full geometric description doesn't mean you could recognize it by sight. This highlights a crucial distinction in philosophy, the difference between knowing how and knowing that. In other words, there's a gap between having the ability to do something and possessing factual, propositional knowledge. The two are connected, but they are not the same thing. A second and more common objection claims that Mary doesn't gain new factual knowledge at all. She simply gains a new form of acquaintance with what she already knew. Dualists respond that what Mary really acquires is a kind of self-knowledge or introspective awareness. Think about it. Even infants and animals, who have no propositional knowledge, no way to express facts in language, can still see red, feel pain, or experience sensations. When they first encounter color, they too gain something similar to Mary's discovery. But clearly, they aren't gaining propositional knowledge, at least not in the way philosophers define it. This creates a complication for dualists. By treating experience itself as a form of knowledge, they risk weakening the original intuitive power of Jackson's argument. In trying to classify experience as knowledge, they take on a confusing and difficult task, one that blurs the lines between knowing facts and simply having experiences. Most people, even if they disagree about the existence of something non-physical, still feel that when Mary sees color for the very first time, she learns something new. But here's the tricky part. What exactly does she learn? No one seems able to fully put it into words. This mystery fits with the idea that certain qualities, like the redness of red or the blueness of the sky, are private, indescribable experiences. If someone could truly describe them, then Mary could have read about it in her black and white books and known what to expect. But she didn't. Some philosophers argue that Mary doesn't gain propositional knowledge at all, only new abilities. She learns how to recognize, imagine, and remember colors. Whether or not this counts as knowledge depends entirely on what we mean by the word. What we can say with certainty is this. For the first time, Mary's nervous system is given the opportunity to distinguish colors directly. Could she have made this distinction without ever having the experience? Intuitively, it seems almost impossible. And this is the real takeaway. The concept of knowledge itself is fragmented. Philosophers use the word knowledge in so many different ways that reducing it to a single definition is nearly impossible. So, in the end, Mary's room doesn't just challenge physicalism. It forces us to question what it even means to know something. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful lesson of all.